Imagine a future where you are standing in the middle of a desert, a mountain, an ocean route, or a remote village with no mobile network anywhere near you, and your ordinary smartphone still connected directly to a satellite. That future is getting closer. Starlink has reportedly reapplied for approval in India for its next-generation satellite constellation with a direct-to-device or D2D connectivity at the center of the strategy.
Elon Musk's Starlink has received a license to offer satellite internet services in India, becoming the third company to secure this approval from the Department of Telecom. Now, according to sources, the Department of Telecom has confirmed that Starlink will be granted trial spectrum within 15 to 20 days for applying it, paving the way for the company to begin operations in the country.
But this isn't simply another Elon Musk story. It could become a major business, infrastructure, security, and ESG story for India and a strategic signal for a global telecom industry. Hi, this is Indranil and welcome to the Spotlight Beyond Profession, where we go beyond profession, beyond headlines, beyond borders. Today, we are decoding Starlink's renewed India push, what direct-to-device connectivity actually means, why Reliance Jio and other players matter, and why India's regulators may ultimately determine who wins this satellite race. Let's start with the development. According to reports, Starlink has resubmitted an application to India's space regulator in space for its Gen 2 constellation. The proposed system would operate in low Earth orbit or LEO at altitude reported between roughly 340 and 615 kilometers. And this isn't simply an application for more satellites. The big change is the technology, direct-to-device connectivity. Instead of requiring a dedicated satellite terminal or dish at every location, D2D technology is designed to enable satellite connectivity directly to compatible everyday devices depending on the technology, spectrum, and regulatory framework. That could fundamentally change the definition of a telecom network. Because today, connectivity generally means tower to network to smartphone. Tomorrow, it could increasingly become satellite to smartphone. And that changes the economics of connectivity. India isn't just another market for Starlink. It is one of the world's largest telecom markets with enormous geographic diversity. India is having dense cities, mountains, islands, deserts, forests, remote communities, and large areas where building traditional terrestrial infrastructure can be expensive or difficult. That's where satellite connectivity becomes strategically interesting. And the Indian government has already issued GMPCS authorization to OneWeb India, Geosatellite Communications, and Starlink, according to a January 2026 government statement. But authorization doesn't automatically mean commercial launch. There are still critical pieces of the puzzle: spectrum, security clearance, network authorization, pricing, local compliance, and potentially D2D rules. India's satellite communications framework is still evolving. TRAI conducted a 2026 consultation on satellite network authorization and spectrum assignment with industry participants, including Starlink, Jio, and OneWeb submitting views. So the race isn't simply technological, it's regulatory. Now let's talk scale. SpaceX has plans for a much larger Gen 2 Starlink system. But the reported Indian application is for nearly 30,000 satellites. That's an enormous number. And here's why scale matters. A satellite network isn't like building one telecom tower. The value comes from constellation density, coverage, capacity, latency, and network economics. More satellites can potentially mean greater capacity and better coverage. But they also create enormous challenges involving capital expenditure, spectrum coordination, space traffic management, orbital debris, cybersecurity, and national security. This is where the ESG conversation becomes much more interesting. Because when we talk about ESG in space, we are not simply talking about carbon emissions. We are talking about responsible infrastructure. Who controls the network? How is data protected? What happens when geopolitical tensions affect access? How are satellites deorbited? How is orbital congestion managed? And who is accountable when critical infrastructure operates across national borders? And Starlink isn't entering an empty market. India already has serious competitors. Reliance Jio has proposed a large LEO constellation. Eutelsat OneWeb is another major player, and Amazon Leo, formerly Project Kuiper, is pursuing its own satellite broadband strategy. So India could become a major battleground between some of the world's biggest technology and telecom ecosystems. And here's the fascinating part. The winner may not simply be the company with the most satellites. It could be the company that best combines technology plus spectrum plus pricing plus local partnership plus regulatory compliance plus national security trust. That's a completely different competitive equation. Now let's focus on direct-to-device. For entrepreneurs and investors, this could be one of the most important developments in telecom. Think about rural connectivity, emergency communications, disaster recovery, shipping, aviation, logistics, remote mining, agriculture, defense, tourism, and critical infrastructure. If a smartphone can communicate through satellite when terrestrial networks disappear, satellite connectivity becomes more than a broadband product. It becomes resilience infrastructure. TRI's 2026 consultation specifically examined whether satellite D2D services should be permitted using IMT spectrum. Industry submissions highlighted potential applications including connectivity for remote areas and emergency communications. And that's an important ESG point. Connectivity itself can become a social impact infrastructure. But there is another side. Traditional telecom operators have legitimate concerns. They have invested billions in building towers, fiber networks, spectrum portfolios, 5G infrastructure, and large customer bases. So if satellite companies are eventually allowed to connect directly to consumer devices, the competitive question becomes, should satellite operators face comparable obligations to terrestrial telecom operators? This isn't necessarily about stopping innovation. It's about creating a level regulatory playing field, and that's where policy making becomes crucial. India has a balance: innovation versus regulation, competition versus investment protection, connectivity versus national security, global technology versus domestic capability. And this is perhaps the most sensitive part of the story. Satellite network can provide connectivity where terrestrial infrastructure is unavailable. That's extremely valuable during disasters, but the same resilience can create security challenges. Recent geopolitical conflicts have demonstrated how satellite communications can become strategically important. India therefore has a legitimate interest in knowing who can access the network, where can terminals operate, how is traffic monitored under law, how quickly can access be restricted when legally required, and how can the government prevent satellite infrastructure from being misused. India's regulatory framework is explicitly considering security and compliance alongside the expansion of satellite communications. So for Starlink, regulatory trust could be just as important as technological capability. For entrepreneurs, this could create an entirely new ecosystem. Satellite-enabled logistics, remote healthcare, agri-tech, maritime connectivity, disaster response platforms, IoT, defense technology, remote industrial operations, and applications we haven't even imagined yet. The biggest opportunity may not necessarily belong to the satellite operator. It could belong to the companies building on top of satellite connectivity. That's how infrastructure revolutions usually work. The internet created companies far beyond internet service providers. Smartphones created ecosystems far beyond handset manufacturers. Cloud computing created an entire software economy. Satellite connectivity could do something similar. So here's our perspective at the Spotlight Media and Technology. Don't look at Starlink India's strategy simply as Elon Musk versus Indian telecom companies. That's too simplistic. The bigger story is about infrastructure, sovereignty, inclusion, capital, and governance. From an ESG perspective, we would ask 5 questions. 1. Does satellite connectivity genuinely reduce the digital divide? 2. Are orbital and environmental risk being responsibly managed? 3. Are customers' data and national security interests adequately protected? 4. Is competition being regulated fairly between satellite and terrestrial operators? And 5. Can the economics support long-term infrastructure investment without creating excessive dependence on one private global network? Those are governance questions, and increasingly they are investment questions too. So here's the questions for you. If your smartphone could connect directly to a satellite anywhere in India, would you still need a traditional telecom network? Or do you think satellite connectivity will become a complement, not a replacement for 5G and fiber? Comment below satellite if you think Starlink could transform connectivity, or 5G if you believe terrestrial telecom will remain dominant, and tell us why. At the Spotlight Beyond Profession, we don't chase the headline, we decode what's underneath it. If you are navigating technology, ESG strategy, infrastructure, or governance at your organization, we help companies with ESG strategy and communication. Link in the description. This is the Spotlight Beyond Profession, beyond headlines, beyond borders. Thank you very much for watching and signing it off.